video, I'm going to share with you a day in my life. It's filled with art, nature, and healthy living, and it highlights some of the many things that enhance my new life as an engineer turned full-time retired artist. Well, hello there. My name is Daphne. This is Sophie, and we welcome you to the channel. On this day, I started out with a glass of spring water and some apple cider vinegar. Don't ask me why. It's supposed to be good for you. I didn't like it very much, and I'm not doing that anymore. But I was on this day. And then I went out to get my sunshine fix in the morning by visiting my little herb garden first. And then my vegetable and fruit garden, which we just built. We're still in the process of adding the irrigation system at this point, but yeah, it's been a pleasure to have this in my yard. And here is my other pleasure in my life, my little dog Sophie. She is my little pup, even though she is currently 14 years old. And my full-time job is entertaining her and keeping her safe. Because you can see our little safe space right there. We do have a lot of animals in this area. And unfortunately, that little garden, or that little fenced-in area isn't a super safe space for her, as we found out. So there's a couple of shots of some of the wildlife in the area, some deer that we passed on the way to the trails. These are the gorgeous, amazing trails that are walking distance from my house. I am so thankful every day to have this here and just a place to get out in nature and just really, really take a deep breath. And highly encourage you to find any space that you can where you can get that sense of peace in nature, even if it's your backyard or a local park or just sitting under a tree somewhere. Next, I am having my coffee. And so I have been postponing my morning coffee a little bit until I get sunlight in my eyes. And here you can see my little handmade mug, my favorite mug that I enjoy my coffee Americano style. This is going to be an art-filled day for me, and so I like to get started with something that can sort of get my creative juices flowing and to get me in a flow state. And so one of my favorite activities for that is something called continuous line drawing. And that is when I start with some sort of a reference image. In this case, it's this really beautiful woman with red hair. And then I take my writing utensil, whether it's, in this case, it's a gel pen, but it could be a pencil or a colored pencil, anything like that. And you start at one point and you just make one continuous line whenever possible. I mean, every once in a while I'll lift my pencil up, but you try to keep it down on the page. You do not erase, and you just make a continuous line until you have the image drawn. And the idea behind this is, by doing it in this way, you're not so fussy about trying to get everything perfect. And as you can see in this case, once I finished with that continuous line drawing, I then added a little bit of watercolor, and I finished with some colored pencil on top just to enhance some of the details. And that's not necessary, but obviously you do whatever you want in your own sketchbook that makes you happy. And on this day, that made me happy. So next I am going on to some acrylic painting. I am prepping one of my canvases with an underpainting, well, not an underpainting, it's just basically a toned ground in orange. And then since I had some leftover orange, I decided to go ahead and pull out this canvas painting that I had been working on weeks ago, and then it's been sitting there because I didn't like it that much and I didn't know how to finish it. So I decided why not give this stenciling technique a try where I apply the paint and then I lift it off and see if I like the textures. So I did actually like the textures when I finished with this one. Still not done. I still have work to do on it, but it was a step in the right direction. Okay, time for breakfast. So you may notice that I put off having breakfast a little bit later into the day. That's because I do intermittent fast most of the time. And what all that means is that I have sort of like an 8-hour feeding window, and it's normally from 10:30 until 6:30. Boy, did I do my math right? Yeah. I don't even think about it anymore. It's kind of funny. I've been doing this for years. And the idea is that you're by not eating food that has to go through your whole digestion process for 16 hours in the day. So from the time I finish eating at night until the next day when I eat again, my body has an opportunity to work on other things rather than focusing on digesting food. And so it's supposed to be a cleanup process going on in my body or not. To be very honest with you, I know that the longer you fast, the better the results. Your body goes through different stages. But it works for me. I'm usually not hungry in the morning, so it's not a big deal for me to do this. So my focus is generally on eggs for breakfast. I'm trying to increase my protein and decrease my carbs. And so eggs are a super easy way to start. And I will add onions, mushrooms, tomatoes, anything that I happen to have into that mix. I love cheese. That's always going to go in there for me. And yeah, that's basically my breakfast routine. Now I am back to that canvas. I am in an experimental phase right now, trying some different techniques and materials. In this clip right here, I mixed together molding paste and gesso, and maybe a little bit of acrylic medium in there too, just to get a texture that I liked. I am spreading it on top of that toned ground that I painted earlier, and now I'm adding some textures with my brush and that piece of corrugated cardboard. And I had a little bit of extra of that mixture left, so I'm storing it in this little box that I made for storing my acrylic paints and mediums that I mix up. So yeah, those little plastic containers that you get, those condiment containers, are really helpful for that. So if you're doing anything like this, highly recommend. That's one way to reuse your plastic. Now, in this case, I never use purple. And now I know why, because I did not like this at all. But I wanted to use something that was transparent, and that was the one transparent color that I had. So instead, I am now using that a technique with the stencil that I used earlier on that other painting, just to sort of lift it and to try to leave some pattern on there. This is just going to be sort of like an underneath my painting, so it's not important. You could really do anything at this point. And then based on what you have, you can kind of work the rest of your painting around it. So here I am looking for a reference image to use on top. Since I love drawing figures and faces, that is generally what I'm going to put on top of my textures. Every once in a while I'll do an animal, or I'll incorporate an animal. So I'm just showing you something that I did previously. And as soon as I settle on a reference, which I just did here, I will start to sketch it on top of my ground. And you can't see the actual reference here, but you will in a minute. You can see that I have a ruler off to the side. Sometimes I will grid my paintings out to make it a little bit easier to get the proportions close. In this case, I didn't feel like gridding it, but I just had that ruler off to the side that was helping me to sort of break that canvas, it's a 12-inch canvas, to break it down into smaller sections that would make it easier for me to get the proportions close. So yeah, sketching it with a colored pencil. Yep. And it doesn't really matter what you use here. You can just use a regular graphite pencil or charcoal I use sometimes, just to get it laid out, because the acrylic paint is opaque. Anything I put down, I can cover up with the paint. I do want some of this texture to show through in the end, so that's part of the reason I'm trying to be a little bit more careful. I don't want too many layers to cover up the underlayer patterns that I'm trying to keep. So, there's another second use for some of my plastic. That was the lid from my cheese container. I'm using that as a little palette, which is really nice and helpful. So I can put it like right on top of my painting, and it's close by and just easy to use. And those can be reused over and over and over again if you want. I just happen to go through a lot of those cheese containers, so I just have a lot of them to use. Okay, so you can see how I'm focusing on the skin tones. This is just a really very, very basic first step in the figure part of the painting. I will show a little clip of the final painting right here. Okay, so in my late morning, I'm having a matcha latte, and I had all these fixins here. You can see I have my collagen and my creatine and my cinnamon that I add to it. At the time of this video, I think I was using my A2 milk. I buy organic A2 milk whenever I can. It's supposed to be a little bit healthier, but recently I have switched to using coconut milk. And that was because someone, there's a lot of fear mongering on the internet, and I don't want to contribute to that. Honestly, I'm sharing information about what I do. I'm not suggesting that anybody else does it. And I'm trying to provide a little bit of context about why I do it. So someone on the internet said that the benefits of green tea, I think it's the polyphenols in green tea, are sort of interrupted or affected by milk, dairy products that you add to it, because the proteins in that dairy product can bind with the good stuff in the green tea and make it less likely to be absorbed by your body. Not sure if that's a true story or not, but that is the reason that I switched over to coconut milk, at least for the time being. Okay, so here I am showing you my little composting setup. It's not a traditional composting setup. I do it in my very, very messy sunroom, which is very, very messy because we are working on the irrigation system for our little garden back there, as I mentioned. I have a bin of little red wiggler worms that I purchased earlier in the season. They are out in the garden. And so I have to feed those little worms with compost. And so what I will do is I'll save my scraps from my vegetables and my eggshells and our coffee grounds. That's what you saw in the kitchen. That's why I was rinsing those eggshells. And I will crush them up, transfer them into another bin inside my sunroom. And then when I have a full bin to process, I'll do what I'm doing here. I'll crush it up. So usually it's just the chopped up vegetables and the eggshells and, the half eggshells or whatever that I will store in a bin in this room. And then I will process it the way you see me processing it with my little blender. And that's the only thing this blender is used for, by the way. It's really gross because sometimes this stuff gets a little bit moldy before I get to it. It's not my favorite activity to do, but it is a necessary activity, and so I do it. So here you see me adding the coffee grounds to that, mixing it up. And I believe I'll show you my shredder that I keep under the table. And I only put like unbleached paper in there, like packaging paper I get from shipments. And then, I transfer that to my bin outside so it doesn't smell up my sunroom too much. And then you can see off in the distance, the little white bin in that bed has the worms in it. So that's where the compost goes once a week with a little bit of that shredded paper on top. Okay, more art. This is kind of a funny story. This is a painting I started. I was practicing, experimenting with the idea of painting watercolor on a prepped canvas board. It worked pretty well. You can see I was able to get a nice image on there. But I sat there looking at this painting for the longest time, and I just was not happy with it. And I decided at this point that it was because the proportions on the face were off. I just didn't like them. So I went back. The nice thing about this, the thing that I learned from this was this is an awesome technique. Prepping your canvas and painting on it with watercolor. It's an awesome technique for getting your underpainting down because you can change it. You can lift the watercolor very easily. You can see I'm just lifting it with water. I'm wetting the painted areas with water and I'm dabbing it with a paper towel to redraw that face. The funny part of the story is I didn't end up using this for the finished painting. I ended up painting over this whole thing and doing something completely different. And that's okay too. I don't like every composition that I come up with. And I think my struggle with this one was it just wasn't something I could imagine hanging on my wall. I wasn't something that I would think anybody else would want to hang on their wall other than maybe the person who is in this painting. And so that's part of the reason that I'm trying to get a lot looser and more expressive with my painting, because I want it to be art and I want it to look like it could be anybody and not like a specific person, and something interesting to go up on the wall. So after that, I had dinner and I think I had a salad, which was kind of boring, so no videos of that. And then I took Sophie for her evening walk. And I caught a glimpse of this buck in my neighbor's yard. And then I caught a glimpse of this adorable kitty, which turned out to be a bobcat. Last little clip here for the day is me in bed with my sketchbook. And once again, showing you my continuous line drawing process. This evening, I had just gotten a new delivery of these pencils. They're like thicker lead pencils, and the leads come in different colors, which I love. And so I started to play with them and sketch some more in bed. So on this night, I found these adorable dog pictures that I started sketching with. And I think I also do a face there, but these are very, very quick. It's so nice to be able to get in bed with just a pencil and a sketchbook in your iPad or phone or whatever reference image and just sketch and not worry about getting marker or paint or any ink on your bed sheets, but still being able to be creative, have the TV on in the background. It's a super fun way to end the day. Thank you so much for joining me. Wishing you love and light and health and happiness and all good things. With love always, Daphne.